Welcome everyone to SEO Office Hours. My name is Michael Chidzey. I'm an SEO here at Good Signals. And part of what we do, along with special guests, are these office hour sessions where people can jump in and ask their questions around their website and web search. By the way, nobody here is in the hot seat and we might not know all the answers, but multiple heads thinking about a problem should help. We've got a bunch of questions submitted already, as you can see, which we'll go through. But if there's anybody here live on the call who would like to ask any questions, please feel free to flag yourself in the chat functionality, which will be monitored. Also, there's usually a bunch of other amazing SEOs live on the call who share their ideas, experiences, and perspectives. And personally, I think that's one of the best things about office hours, isn't just hearing from the four of us, but hearing from everybody else. So please continue to do that. And you may have noticed that Joe's not with us this week. So instead, we have Natalia. Good morning.
Good morning, Michael. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. Yes, Jo is not here because she's traveling back from Women in Tech Festival in London, which happened yesterday as of the day of the recording. So I am filling in to be your host today. I'll try to do my best to fill in Jo's shoes, which is not the easiest because she's juggling so many tasks here. So bear with me. And let me start with a quick introduction to myself if you haven't met me. I'm Natalia Witczyk. I am based in Barcelona currently because in a couple of weeks I'll be based in China, where I'll be discovering the world of Baidu and learning all about search engines that are not Google, a very different internet landscape. And I am international SEO consultant. And I'm here today to help us integrate the conversations. So please type in where you're calling in from. And let's start with the introduction of our fantastic guests. So we have first Jonathan Moore, who's here for the first time with us today. However, I had the pleasure of meeting Jonathan on many SEO events. And Jonathan has a vast experience of over 15 years in the industry, including 6 years in leading SEO and analytics agency for digital marketing agencies from the UK. And he is an avid event goer, analytics consultant, loves to dig into data, solve any e-commerce related issues. And also, when he's not digging into data, he's actually a foodie and a traveler around Europe. So if you need any kind of suggestions on good restaurants all over Europe, Jonathan is a fantastic resource for that. And I can confirm because I did ask him about some suggestions in the past. So Jonathan, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to be here and I'm excited.
Fantastic. And also back with us, we've got Luke Gosha, who's a head of SEO and AI, a new role just integrated the two fields together at Strategic, an award-winning full-service marketing and transformation agency. And he's passionate about AI, driving organic traffic through data-driven strategies. And also looks as a speaker at many industry events, spoke at Brighton SEO last year, for example. Apparently will be also joining Brighton this year if anyone wants to say hi. And also appears as a guest on many office hours. So he knows the drill already. Thank you, Luke, for being back with us.
No problem. I'm glad to be here and good morning, everyone.
I'll also want to drop a note and say huge congratulations to Dimitri, who's a new father who was supposed to be here today with us. However, obviously, a baby's more important than SEO. I hope for everyone. So congratulations, Dimitri. If you're watching the recording, we are very happy for you. And before we start with the questions, I want to say hello to everyone who's dialing in today from their homes. Please be active in your chat, say where you're dialing in from. And also, if you want to join the call, you can do that through Good Signals website. I'll drop a link in the comments.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, when Dimitri said he couldn't make it, that was a really good excuse. My wife's got into labor. I think that one's okay. If there was ever one. Okay, I'm just going to get the questions up. I'm already falling apart with that, Joe. There you go. I'm going to cheat stay and do it from my screen because you probably noticed I'm not in the office. Okay, here's one for the panel. Got a couple of sites where one needs shifting to a new domain because of regulatory reasons. It's a similar domain, so no big drama. I'm thinking of redirecting the old site to one of our most important revenue generating sites to see if we can squeeze a bit of SEO boost out of it. What do you think? What I'm guessing here from the question, just to clarify, is you've got quite a few domains, and it sounds like rather than redirecting the domain that is similar to this one over here, it sounds like they're thinking about redirecting it to one of their biggest revenue generating sites. That's how I've interpreted it. Who would like to kick off?
I'm happy to kick off on
Go
this
for
one.
it, Luke. Great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think from my perspective, I don't see no issues with that approach. It makes sense to me. One thing I would do is just check the domain currently that you want to move over to your biggest revenue driving one. Make sure it's a good domain, it's clean, there's no bad practices or black hat SEO tactics that have been carried out on that domain in the past, because you don't want to migrate something that is bad into something that is hugely revenue driving, because that could impact the business. But in terms of the regulatory need, it makes sense to move it and merging it into one, as well as being able to leverage some of that visibility from the existing revenue driving domain, which may be more popular. So yeah, I support that approach.
Great. Jonathan, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I don't see that being an issue in principle. I think the main thing is, provided they're similar, like the same topic, the same niche, I think that should be a pretty safe thing to do. I think there's probably some context with the compliance, the regulatory stuff that maybe makes it sound a bit more trickier than it perhaps is. But I think in principle, if you're trying to consolidate two domains into one, and provided they're pretty much on the same topic, I don't see that being a problem. Where I see that being a problem is if they're dramatically different and you're trying to get things in and you're trying to put a square peg in a round hole. So if they dovetail quite nicely and you're essentially targeting the same audience, I think that's a good thing to do. And then it's again about obviously making sure that the migration itself or the consolidation goes well, and probably you've got a nice UX as well. I think that's probably another consideration, is so that they fit in well together as well. So in principle, I think it's going to be okay.
Great. Natalia, what about you? Any thoughts?
So I have a comment from the audience. Simon is saying, I'm assuming that the regulatory change is a country-level domain change. That should be the first concern. Otherwise, that sounds like a normal migration. And I kind of align with that opinion. If the regulatory means you have to change, then just normal migration should work.
Great. The only thing I would question a little bit is just why redirect or move the old site. I get it. They've said they're revenue generating one, but if they're effectively moving one website from here to here and say all the content's the same, the branding's more or less the same and so on, why would you redirect that to another site over here and not to the site that you're moving? That's the only thing I would question there. To me, that part's just a little bit confusing. I think I would be more tempted to go with, if you're moving the site from A to B, I would also redirect A to B personally, but that's what I would add. Is there anything else in the chat?
Not so far. Not much discussion on this one. I think it's this question that needs more context, maybe.
Great. Okay. Oh, Rob's just said about two separate domains. Seems like the question wording is quite vague. Yeah, that is the only thing. Yeah, good point, Rob. Okay, what are your thoughts on competitor comparison pages targeting competitor brand terms?
Yeah,
go for it, Jonathan.
Yeah, I think this is like a pretty standard sort of UX pattern that you see. I think if like you go on like something like Baymard, there's like a whole section devoted to critiquing these sort of pages. So I think again, the question there is if it's beneficial for the user to create a comparison, say in a B2B context of brand A versus brand B, probably like the one that springs to mind there would be like a HRS versus SEMrush sort of comparison page. We've probably all seen them. They are really helpful for people at the sort of the lower end of the purchase decision journey. Yeah, I think they're good. They help people understand the comparison between two different products, essentially. And, you know, you do see search volumes associated with that. I think that's absolutely a pretty sensible thing to do if you're seeing that in the marketplace, evidence of that, to create such a page.
I think Jonathan's quite right there. I do think, however, if I am a brand and I'm creating pages just to try and capture search demand for a competitor's similar product, that is a hacky kind of approach. And of course, you're going to put your own product, you're going to review it as being better, which is, again, is not user-centric. In context, it just depends. If you're doing that kind of quick hack tactic of trying to compare your product with someone else's product just to try and get branded search from their site to your site, it's probably not going to work, because if people are searching for your competitor brand, then they're likely to want to go to your competitor brands within context. And it also depends how well liked you want to be as a brand within your industry as well. If you start to create these competitor based pages, you may suddenly become isolated within the industry as well. So that's something to think about.
Natalia, what do you think?
I think there is an important case to be made that if you're looking at just search volumes for your competitor name and your strategy is driven by the fact that people Google that competitor so often and just want to show up for the name, you're not just going to pop up on top of the SERP and just take those clicks. So you have to manage your expectations there. So maybe thousands of searches per month per competitor, you probably get 5 clicks or 10 click stops because people know what they're looking for. So you have to manage those expectations internally and then with your stakeholders when you produce pages like that. And you have to decide if it's worth it. And I also like Steve's take here, who says in the chat that if that question is being asked, why not provide your own take on it? It needs care and competitor knowledge, though. So also, don't just use your competitor name. Actually, if you want to review them, sign up, test, point out the good things, and just count on the realistic results and not huge search volumes being your actual clicks.
Yeah, I think if your product or service is way better than competitors and you want to use that as a way to show that kind of makes business sense, where these guys offer this, like the industry offers this, and we're either cheaper or better or bigger or whatever it is. But if you work in one of those industries where you're all quite identical and you are just trying to grab their toe, competitor brand name, login, competitor brand name, phone number, like those kind of, they may not appear for that to be, I don't know if I'd go down that route. I think you just have to be a little bit careful with this strategy, because obviously if you do this and others aren't at the moment, you might end up finding that others then start doing this. So I think it depends on what your industry is currently doing at the moment, and if that's the norm. And obviously, I think it was Luke that said it, obviously if people are searching to compare your particular product to competitors, then it makes sense to own that conversation. I think one of the ways of doing this might not be on your own website, but have a look and see what ranks for those terms at the moment. And you might be able to, if for instance, whoever has reviewed it, maybe you don't feel like that review is fair or they've missed something, maybe you could reach out to that journalist or blogger and get them to update that and share with them like evidence why that's wrong, rather than have that conversation on your site. Just because obviously I think anybody landing on your site and then they read through this comparison, they realize where they are, straight away you're going to feel like there's the bias there. I also think about that. Did anybody want to add anything else, or is there anything in the chat?
Yeah, so I see Preeti saying the reason why I don't really like competitor pages is that the company who's doing it always show themselves in a good light, which is not always the case. As everyone said, it's if they're doing it, do it right. So again, and that's probably this user trust as well. So
the other thing I would add is users are likely to want impartial views, so they wouldn't potentially look for that content hosted on your site. They would look for a third-party independent comparison review that they're going to trust more. So again, it may be fruitless exercise to go through this kind of competitor strategy, because you've got to think about users really.
Amazing. Okay, Carl, we're cracking through them today. Honestly, it's Jo. She holds us back. I'm obviously joking. Sorry, Jo, for when you watch this. Okay, next question. I'm concerned there may be underlying technical issues with my company's website, and Screaming Frog isn't showing anything obvious. I want to run a log file analysis to investigate further. What specific data should I request from our devs to get a clear picture? This isn't something that I've done before, so I want to make sure I ask for the right information. Great. Anybody here experts in log file analysis? What would you ask for? Jonathan, go for it.
I think the first thing I'd probably do to frame it is really do a little more digging just to understand that log analysis is going to be the right solution to the problem, because it's quite a big job to do, like in terms of hours. So the first thing I'd be doing is probably go into Search Console in the first instance and look at like the crawl errors report, because that's like the canary in the mine shaft there in terms of, are you getting lots of non-200 status codes, right? So if there's some signals there in Search Console, I would then probably say, let's go down this route of requesting logs, right? Because requesting logs is not an easy job. Quite often you might get pass ag replies from devs as well when requesting them. And then I think the other thing that's also important is Screaming Frog. So are there other tools and diagnostics that you can do? So within Search Console, you've got like the fetch URL tool. So I'd be looking at that as well to see, again, are there any clues there that basically just eyeballing things in a bit more detail to help come up with an initial hypothesis before getting all the logs and then going through that process. But in terms of requesting of the logs, the one thing I would advise is there's a really good blog. I think this is pre 5 years ago, but Suganthan did this really good blog on logs and particularly like some of the nuances between the different servers and the different formats that you can get back. Because like for experience, sometimes you request logs and you find out that like they might not only be held for a day or a week or a month. And that might not cover the time frame that you're looking to analyze. So the first thing I would encourage is get that initial hypothesis and then do a bit on understanding what server, what platform is there, things like load balancing, things like that obviously impact what you get back, because you could get back a lot of data that you're going to have to work through. And there's a lot of processing that's probably needed before you can even get it on into a tool to do some analysis. So the blog I mentioned is Suganthan. I'll put the link in the chat now. Here you go. So that's a really good primer on the formats and like some of the server nuances. But what you got to do as well is that once you get it, you got to then be able to read all the files, isolate it for like a Googlebot. This is time consuming. So you need to really think about, like, before you do that, before you go down the wormhole, is feel like a bit more confident with doing it. And the other thing I'm going to share is this is as old as the hills, but I think this is also another good blog on this. This is from Oliver Mason. This is like from a different decade. But again, this is good because basically the challenges with so much data that traditional things like Excel are gonna break, that Oliver talks through, like using the command line for doing a lot, like how to solve some of those like quite tricky problems there. But if you're looking for an out-of-the-box tool, Screaming Frog has a log analyzer. But the important thing there is you're still going to get a lot of stuff back that you're probably going to have to do some cleaning, some processing before you put it into the analyzer. So my advice is think really hard about, is it going to give you the silver bullet you're looking for? There's probably some stuff to do prior to that to help give you the confidence that you want to go down that path. But if you like data, it is super interesting to look at logs. I do most of my analysis using pandas and a bit of like basically using the CLI to clean it before I get it into pandas. That's just because I'm too tight to pay for a tool. So that's my thoughts on it.
Amazing. Luke, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think Jonathan covered the question really well. There are a few things I would add. Again, crawl stats in Google Search Console is a great tool and report. That should be like the first protocol to understand if there's any errors there, if Googlebot's hitting any kind of bottlenecks in its crawling abilities there. So definitely go there first, see if there's any interesting insights that could help you diagnose this a little bit better. And then I would say another point is just around taking your developers on a journey. As Jonathan mentioned, getting log files can be very time consuming. Your dev team may not be capturing enough of that data. They might only be getting a day's worth of data, which may be pretty useless in terms of what type of analysis you could get from that. Build a case, take your dev team on a journey, get them on board, make them excited about the process, show them the capabilities of what log file analysis you're going to be doing and what you're trying to get out of it, because that way you've got them on board and then be more inclined to help you find solutions, as well as trying to provide them with enough filtering so that they're not exporting large amounts of data, because again, that will be very difficult to analyze and then you'll have to do your own filtering. So anything you can do to provide the devs with information up front to make the process easier, I think is always recommended from my perspective.
Amazing. Natalia, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so a couple of people had a very awakened discussion about how they would sort those issues if we're contacted. So if you are listening, try to find, maybe come next week and see who's here, because they are keen to solve your problem. And also just to say that if people feel comfortable with changing domains, it can help us look before. And if we see something very serious, we would let you know on the call. So next time you ask questions like that are very specific to your domain, think about that if possible. And also I have people mentioning Screaming Frog log file analyzer. However, Simon says, I don't really think you will find tech issues with log files though, because it's very limited data and you have to also have context for that sometimes. And also, the first time the log files fill up the server and stop it working is the exact moment the devs turn on the log files. You may not have any. So some insights here.
Amazing advice. Just on, Natalia, what you said then about sharing domains, we can do it where it's anonymous as well. So in terms of YouTube, so if you share it, everybody here on the call is amazing. We can share the domain with them, but we won't share it publicly on YouTube. So just to highlight, if you want to keep it anonymous or fairly anonymous, that's quite a good way of doing it. And on the form, you can say that. And I always check. So basically, I always ask people, if I get their email address, I go back to them and say, please, can we share it? But no one just gives it to us. So I usually have to ask, and usually I get told I can share with the panel. But by the way, amazing advice from everybody there, really detailed. Thank you. Thank you so much. So this question has been asked a couple of times, and I'm sorry I didn't ask it when you first asked. So they put it in a few times. I need your help. I'm starting my SEO journey by taking a few online courses, but there's so much information out there. It's feeling a bit overwhelming. Do you have any idea of how I should go about this, or a roadmap to be specific? Has anybody got any advice on, if you were starting your SEO journey today, what would you do?
I think there's some really useful tools out there. Aleda has Learning SEO, which is a great resource and a roadmap in itself as well. So I do recommend following that, but also just taking things at your own pace. You're not in a race against anyone. I think the SEO community is very giving. There's lots out there, but at the same time, it can feel very overwhelming. There's lots of information out there. Just take it at your own pace and start a passion project as well. Maybe set up some domains and do some practical SEO and experimenting in tandem with what you're learning as well, so you can put that learning into practice. So those will be my recommendations there.
Amazing. Jonathan, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think with SEO learning, there is like this paradox of choice, right? So I would say start off by finding people that think like the same way as you, right? To start like that seed of someone that you trust or you respect. Let's just say Aleda's an obvious candidate there because she's curated this amazing list of resources. You can then follow the Hansel and Gretel trail of those resources, right? Because for Aleda to include them, they're going to be good from people that are obviously, hopefully respected as well. And what that'll do is it'll help you uncover like this mind map of people that you respect. And again, mainly it's like in tune with how you think. I think that's important that as SEOs, like you develop your own style, your own like way of thinking. So I would start off by find people where their voice resonates with you, and you can do things like learning SEO. There's from that, I'll help you uncover things like courses, for example. So one course that I've been really impressed with is Lazarina Stoy's like ML for SEO course. That's been absolutely fantastic. And, I discovered that off the back of her speaking at events, Women in Tech SEO, in SEO. So that helped me like discover that, and hearing her speak, that was like someone that I felt was communicating really well to me directly. I think the other thing is like the importance of probably getting some experience, like starting on, like when you like doing a website. Like my first ever project was a local hockey club website. This is like a long time ago, but it helped me like get good at HTML, learn a bit about CSS, servers, things like that. Just common problems, and it basically just helps you get that purposeful practice early on, which I can't like emphasize enough. There used to be like this blog on, this is like my out here recommendation. There's this blog on Moz, again from years ago, by Dave Sottomano. It's pretty brutal in terms of, it's like a junior SEO task list. It's completely OTT, but if you find the blog, I'm trying to search for it now as I speak, that gets you a lot of that. Yeah, I got the link here. I don't necessarily agree with all of it, but it's like a lot of, like, you want to get that purposeful practice and you're basically interested in suffering and beasting yourself. There's some stuff in here that you should possibly look at as well. And I'm offering that as a contrary opinion. So here's the links to that. But just do something that is interesting to you, and just try and help people. I think that, and if you don't have an idea for a passion project, there's plenty of like charities and things like that are always looking for pro bono SEO help as well. So hopefully there's a good sort of sweet spot in the middle there.
Amazing advice. Natalia, do you have anything to add?
There's plenty of fantastic advice in the chat. I'll start with
Yeah.
Preeti, who shares her story. As someone who started like a few years ago and has pivoted 25 million times, it is hard. The only thing I recommend is breaking things and learning from them. That's how I learned. Also, tons of free resources are available, and getting in communities help. And true, there's a lot of free communities, brilliant communities that kind of push people to do more in their SEO careers. We also have Ebere saying, find a mentor, join a community, and try things out yourself. And Ebere actually here is one of the community organizers and organizes Search African, which I'm going to shout out to because it's an amazing initiative. So thanks, Ebere, for sharing that. We also have someone speaks about building a blog, gaining traffic, and then the Google update ruined it. Okay, so you have to be aware that it's not as easy as it used to be 20 years ago or 10 years ago when some of us started. It's very much saturated now. Yes, start a blog or anything, even if it's free, practical SEO is more helpful.
Great, amazing. I 100% agree on the starting a website of some sort, and it can be about anything. And it doesn't also have to be your passion project. It can just be like one of my, I think it was like my second or third site I started was just about events for the event industry because I was working there at the time. And if you've got a personal site that it doesn't matter if you break things or want to dramatically change things or test things, is really helpful as opposed to doing that on a client's website or your employer's website. I have lots of playgrounds now of different sites that I do things with if I've got this idea or just want to try something new. And I definitely recommend that. And then the other thing, and I think it's because Joe's not here, but I have to say, going to events actually can be good. I think some of the first events I went to were things like Link Love and Search Love and so on. And I think when you go to these events and you hear from people across the industry that are doing different things, because like Jonathan said, there's so many different parts of SEO. If you can hear from others in terms of what they're doing and what they're passionate about, that might help you work out what part of SEO you want to maybe start with or learn a bit more about. But I've always found that events can be really inspiring to hear case studies from people or just some of their kind of ideas and strategies.
I'll actually
Okay.
jump in and use this opportunity because Joe did ask me to mention the events, and I did forget to do it in the intro, so I'll do it now. So if you're based in Barcelona, we have 2 events next week. First, we have dinner on Tuesday, and then on Friday, we have a panel discussion on the use of AI in 2025 and 2 talks. If you want to join, I'll drop in the links in the chat and also find a community in your area. There's a lot of meetups and a lot of towns and cities do have opportunities to meet people in real life and learn from them. So yeah, do that.
Amazing. And that's Search Barcelona, right? That in terms
Barcelona,
of, yeah,
exactly.
perfect. Okay, next question. We run a fitness coaching website with an active YouTube channel. Our videos rank well on YouTube, but aren't driving traffic to our website despite including links in the descriptions. How do I optimize YouTube videos for SEO so they drive more website traffic? How do I properly implement YouTube schema markup to help search engines understand video content? What's the best way to track conversions from YouTube clicks to website visits? And should I embed videos directly on high-ranking blog posts to improve dwell time? So lots of sort of questions in one there. Does anybody have any thoughts on any of them or all of them?
Yeah, go
for it, Jonathan.
I guess some initial thoughts, and then hopefully this will get the discussion going. I don't know too much about optimizing like YouTube videos, so I'll skip that bit. But I think in terms of implementing the schema on your site, that's, I'll say, pretty easy. But again, there's certainly things. So there's like things like the Yoast that sort of can detect like if you've got a video on the page, and it's going to help you put the schema on there. But possibly in this context, it might not be. You might be looking just to iframe the page in. So I have got one client that has got a very good YouTube channel. It's got like over 1 million subscribers. And I think one thing that they do a lot of is experimenting with like the CTAs at the end of the videos to drive people back to the website. But they very much view like web and YouTube as 2 separate platforms, essentially. So it's trying to create awareness of one and then use the other to create the awareness of the other. But I think the main thing to consider is that if you're in YouTube, you might be watching that within the app on a mobile. The tricky thing there is if you're doing that app experience, it's harder then to leave the app to go then back to web and vice versa. I would be there looking at things like the call to actions at the end of the video. You can use things like UTM tracking parameters again to help measure some of the referral traffic as well. So that's one thing we do. We've got a custom channel in Google Analytics to measure our YouTube referrals as well. So that's one way that we know if we're getting consistent YouTube traffic and that's changing. And then in terms of iframing or embedding the videos on, say, a blog post, that's definitely something to do. Again, if you've got like good content, we encourage you to do that. And if it's going to essentially help make the blog better, that's going to be a good experience there. And what we see is then you have the blog ranking, and if you look at the SERP layout sort of perspective, you're going to have hopefully the sort of video elements of the SERP, but then you can actually have the blog post as well. So it's a good way then to control like page real estate as well and get your branding over. So those would be my initial thoughts.
Great. Luke, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think CTAs in the actual video itself is going to be super important. Someone who's looking at fitness videos may just want to know how to do some kind of exercise while they're in the gym. So really understanding that user journey, they're going to be using YouTube for a specific reason versus coming to your website. So maybe there's a CTA call out that on your videos, you can start to direct people to your website to download a training program or some kind of PDF or white paper or directing them to a specific blog, then that would make sense in terms of that user journey. Someone in the chat mentioned video sitemaps. I think that's a great way to help search engines understand where these videos are located on your site, and providing that in a nice video-only sitemap is definitely a recommendation that I would call out and agree with as well. Yeah, that's my 2 cents on that one.
Amazing. Natalia?
Yeah, so I have Preeti here sharing a very good insight. So she's saying, the only thing I learned from YouTube is that if you have a successful channel, that doesn't mean that your website will also blow up, similar to what Jonathan said. People also ask their audience to go to the website or a specific blog post for more information related to the video. But yeah, it's a very separate ecosystem even. So as Luke said, understanding the journey is the clue to actually understand if maybe we're succeeding with YouTube and we think we're failing because we don't get website traffic, right?
Amazing. The only thing I would add is just when I've done stuff like this before. So I had a client who they basically recruit us to remote towns and so on across the country where they just don't have doctors. And I ended up hiring this doctor who was really passionate about the HR system in their country. And I basically got that person to run a load of webinars for me, for them basically, and they actually brought half of the audience to those webinars each week. It was for like a GP college essentially, where you have to be a member of in this country, in that particular country. And one thing I was doing was basically chopping up those videos. So you'd have the sort of webinar where people could, a bit like this, ask questions, but it was for each webinar was for a very different part of the process of basically migrating to this country. And one week was about the culture, one week was just about going through the process, one week was about the qualifications that you need to like transition and all of that stuff. And so what we basically did was chopped those up, and individually those videos themselves ranked really well on YouTube for just specific questions. But then we also used that content on their website to build up the content around those topics. And obviously you had this doctor who was really passionate about HR, who was already there and was also a coach. Sorry, I'm not really making much sense without saying the client. I try really hard not to. But basically, it was just, we were treating them very differently. And I think that's what you've got to look at, is how people are using YouTube versus how people are using the site. And actually just within the video, made it very clear that you need to be a part of this college to be able to do a lot of the things that they want them to do. Cool. Sorry if that wasn't very clear. Is there anything else in the chat before we jump to the next question?
Apart from people wanting to employ John Mueller to make fitness classes, so it apparently brings traffic.
There we go.
There is some comments from Steve. I still love YouTube, but my goodness, it's so expensive these days. Quality is so high. And Preeti is answering one of the questions that was put in the original question. Should I embed videos directly on high-ranking blog posts to improve dwell time? And she's saying, why would you even do that if the videos are not related? So then there's debate saying if related, of course, makes sense, but don't just put videos for the sake of it if there's no connection to the actual content. And people also speak about repurposing. So Albert says, is repurposing the YouTube video as text on my website considered bad? And I would answer straight off that it's not, because you're repurposing. You're not copying someone else's content. It's your content, you're just giving it a different format. So that's absolutely fine. So that could be also another way, right? If there are good performing videos, maybe make a blog post out of them too and see if they perform organically.
Amazing. Okay, next question. I have a second interview for a content SEO role on Wednesday, but they're asking for data evidence of successful content campaigns, and I'm not sure what to show. They want to focus on link building, which is probably my weakest area. So far, the only evidence I have is my current work, which is mostly collection page optimization, metadata, short descriptions, so not fully relevant, and one high traffic blog post that I wrote. I'm trying to use Ahrefs to pull data from previous roles, but since it's only estimates, I'm not sure how reliable that will be. What do you suggest presenting in this situation, and how can I make the most of what I have? Like, Luke, I know you guys are hiring at the moment, so somebody who sits in the other chair, which as the employer, what would you suggest if you were looking for somebody in content SEO?
Yeah. Thanks for the plug there. Yeah, we are hiring.
Do you like that very smooth how I did that?
that was nice. That was nice. Yeah, this is an interesting question, really. Firstly, I would say be honest. If you have been doing collection pages, honesty is key here. But I'd also show some enthusiasm as well, in the sense that you could potentially present your concepts and ideas around how you would take, whoever you're interviewing for, if they have a campaign or strategy or an idea, use that to ideate what you would do for them. So if you haven't done link building in the past, but you have some ground knowledge in it, then you might want to show an example of how you could incorporate a link building campaign or a content marketing campaign for the person you're interviewing for. So honesty, showcase what you've done, and you use some creativity in the process to showcase your skills, your ideas, and your approach, really would be my recommendations there.
Amazing. And just before we jump on, Luke, what are you looking for at the moment, position-wise, just in case anybody on the call is looking for a job?
Yeah, so we're looking for SEO consultant roles who can strategize and look after client accounts. Yeah, that's what we're looking for at the minute. If anyone's interested, do reach out to me and hit me up on LinkedIn.
And are they London-based or is it hybrid? What?
Yeah, hybrid. Ideally London-based, but hybrid roles with flexibility to come into the office as well.
Amazing. Jonathan, do you have any advice? What should they do?
Yeah, I think, first of all, congratulations, second interview. So I would approach this with, I think it's important to frame it with honesty because that shows that you've got integrity. And then what I would do is turn the problem in, try and flip it, find ways to flip it. So how I would approach this is to try and tell a story in terms of this is where you're here today, and this is maybe the story that you've been on through your career. And then you can frame that story in terms of maybe a series of situations, complications, and solutions. Or what you're doing is you're taking through like the interview panel through like your experience and you're showing what you've learned along the way. It shows that you can think like analytically and you can recall what's happened and be able to critique what went well. Those are skills that I think you'd be able to try and like translate. I would also suggest probably go through like the JD. Hope they should have provided you with a JD. So with the things there that they're looking for, hopefully it doesn't just say link building because that's not a good JD and that would be a red flag. But what I'd be looking at there is what you can do is try and look at each bullet point. So if they're saying like we're looking for people to like organize or do come up with ideation, give an example of where you've done something similar, where you've done ideation or you've done some outreach so try and think of ways to creatively to flip it. But I would try and do it in a story. You're the main character. So to convey that enthusiasm, demonstrate you've done a bit of research on the company. And yeah, think of ways then to what function that story needs to tell. So it's probably going to be a bit of selling, probably a bit of persuasion there if you feel that there's a skill gap. I don't think companies are too worried about skill gaps, to be honest. It's more just if you've got the right attributes and you're aligned with the company's value, mission, and ethos, that would be more important to me there. So I'd think of trying to tell it as a story. There's loads of story formats you can like find. Like I'm just gonna come up with some here. Again, it's got to be aligned with who you are. But things like rags to riches, like you're on a quest, like you're trying to slay a dragon, like things that you've learned. So you're on a story, you have an initial success, you then encounter like a problem and you sink back to the bottom, but you pick yourself up. And these are things that you can say that happened on your career that actually gets the panel really engaged with you. It bonds, it's showing your personality. And then it's not as a focus on like the actual link build, the thing there that you're a bit worried about. Another idea is find some campaigns that you're really impressed with. And you mentioned you've got access to some data sources. I think, again, interviewers are sympathetic that individuals aren't going to have licenses or they can't use their existing company's license. But just show that you can critique a campaign, understand what went well, explain what you maybe do different, or how you would execute it, or how you would. And I think that will give them an idea of like how you think, and again, hopefully showcase yourself as the best candidate for the role. So that would be like my advice. But yeah, just go for it, be yourself, be authentic.
Jonathan, can I say, just before I pass over to Natalia, I love some of the things you said. I'm going to be using the Hansel and Gretel phrase that you used earlier, and there's quite a few there. Amazing. You got the job. Natalia, do you have anything to add, or is there anything in the chat?
Yeah, so maybe from my experience to add something, I wouldn't think of that far of advice as Jonathan gave. I think it's brilliant. I usually think in a simpler way. I'm thinking, what does the person behind the table on the other side want? And there's two scenarios. They either know SEO and data, and they want you to explain how you see it, how you understand it. So even if you show Hrefs graph, you dropping in that it's only estimate, but that's the best you can do. And if you can drop a note without sharing any numbers because it's your company, just to say it's quite relevant to how we saw it in Search Console or whatever other place, that would be good enough because you explained that you know the data and they know the data as well. They know Hrefs and how they work, or they don't know how it works. So you show them because they might be hiring someone for SEO that not being an SEO person themselves. And then just showing data points and explaining it to them, they will see you as an expert, even though they don't understand how the data is calculated in Hrefs. So you might hint on it's not as accurate as exact data, but you don't have to take responsibility for how SEO tools work. So you also don't dwell on it and don't spend time explaining how it's not accurate at all because it doesn't work in your favor. Just drop a hint. And anything that works, obviously, it's always a team effort. So no one expects you to say, this is all I did, and that's all me, because it never is. There's so many factors in SEO. But do be positive about what you've achieved, because if you have a high-ranking blog post, definitely shout about that. That works in your advantage. And that's me, and then chat. So people are saying, frame your current work as a form of content strategy. You're optimizing content to improve visibility and click-through rates, which are essential elements of any content campaign. And also discuss your approach to outreach, content promotion, relationship building. Use Hrefs data to provide context, but be transparent about the estimates. Exactly. Emphasize your willingness to learn and grow in the role.
Amazing. Such amazing advice from everybody. I don't have much to add apart from I haven't gone to a job interview for a long time. I've obviously done lots of pitching, but I know that can be quite tough and you can beat yourself up a little bit. And usually on a job description that they also put things like skills that you aren't actually expected to have at that point in your journey. So I don't know what sort of level this is, but for instance, say it's a junior content SEO role and they're asking for technical knowledge and analytics and link building as well as the content stuff. Everybody else is going to be in the same boat. I love what Jonathan said around storytelling and just taking a few of the examples that you've got from, and I think it's great, you've got collection pages, so that sounds like quite commercial pages, and then you've got a blog post which is editorial. You've got those two examples, so I would definitely go into why you chose those topics, how you went about the research, has it worked, what would you do differently, what Jonathan said about any of your old campaigns that you worked on. If you can basically say, this is what I would do differently now if I was doing it again, as somebody that has interviewed lots of people and so on, that I think that's something that I would be really interested in, because I want to make sure that you're learning as you're going and that sort of stuff. But yeah, I'm sure everybody else is in the same boat. If you can find a good, interesting story there. And with the link building side, if you don't say have that experience, one way that I've used content in the past is a way of earning links naturally by creating really good content. So maybe you could do a little bit of research beforehand on that relationship between content and earning links and coverage if you don't already have it, and just maybe have some examples of, when you talk about what you do differently, examples of campaigns that have really inspired you or content that's really inspired you. Amazing. I can see lots of stuff happening in the chat, but I don't think it's that relevant. So I'll just go to the next question. I think lots of jokes. How are we doing for time? Okay, this is quite a big question, but we also have our regular questions. So we'll do, if we don't cover it properly, we'll cover it properly next time. Our marketing team has been publishing content consistently across Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn for our site. However, despite thousands of shares and engagement, there's no visible SEO improvements in organic rankings. How do I improve engagement and credibility signals from social media to ensure SEO benefits? And how do I set up proper UTM tracking to measure the true impact of social media on organic search? Jonathan, are you okay to start with this one?
Yeah, I'll throw my hat into the ring and then
Hey.
let some responsible people hopefully bail me out. So it's similar to my YouTube answer that they're different platforms essentially. So again, it's the purpose of the video and that audience that you're targeting within that platform. What are you trying to get them to do at the end of the ad, right? Or is it a piece of content, right? Or what's the call to action? So I'll give a really bad example at the moment, right? I'm getting retargeted a lot at the moment with content for lose the dad bod or get the gut health stuff, right? I'm at that age where I'm getting that crap on like primarily Instagram because I'm not on like TikTok. But the call to action there at the end of those sort of videos is to get me to click a link to open the browser within the social media platform, right? So the call to action there isn't necessarily to get me to do a search for the site. And to be honest, half the time I'm just watching a video thinking, oh, that's funny, but I'm like leaving it there because it's not giving out enough trust signals in the first place to basically even make me think that I should buy that product. So I think the important thing is going back to the audience and what action you want them to take at the end of it. Is it to be a direct, like, sort of e-com action, or is it more to just bond with them, get them to follow you? But different bits of social media have different roles to play within that sort of purchase decision journey or that customer acquisition cycle. So I would look at it there. Now, with the UTM tracking, I think is like certain channel rules that you need to basically set up. So you've got UTM source, medium campaign. UTM source needs to come from a recognized social media source. There's a full list on the Google Analytics website. There's 200. It's on a PDF. It's impossible to read, but you've got to make sure you use the right ones there for UTM source. UTM media tends to just, if it contains social, you're on the money. Campaign is campaign. But again, you just want to pay attention there that they're going into the right pot. So the first thing I would do there is go into Google Analytics and check your unassigned. You will then find if there's weird things in unassigned, and I'd also check your referrer. Reason I say referrer is because a lot of sites use things like link in bio. Link in bio doesn't get classed as organic social in GA4, it gets classed as referral. That's because it comes through as link in bio. It's not in that list of 200, so it gets put in that pot. So I would look at that or create a custom channel there if you really want to go down that route. So that's the UTM sort of quandary there. And then my point there on engagement and credibility signals is what action are you trying to get people to complete? Is it to do a brand search, or is it to trust you as a brand? Is it to do other things? So is the purpose of the video to stimulate a search? Because again, like SEO tends to be the harvester of all other media, right? So what are you trying to get people to do with the videos, and then like align? So it's like a media planning exercise. So those are my thoughts.
Amazing. Natalia, do you have anything to add?
I think Jonathan has framed it very well. I would
Yeah.
definitely think about the user journey. I also want to add that there's very little correlation between social media success and search rankings. And if there's any, it's correlation, it's not causation. So don't trust that at all. And typically the correlation comes from the fact that if you invest a lot in good strategies in SEO and social media, obviously you're going to do well in both, but it doesn't mean one implies the other. So definitely have that in mind. And also social media platforms, they are designed to keep the users within the platforms. They don't want to send traffic outside. And they've been really proactively working on the changes in the algorithm to keep the users in as long as possible. All those infinite scrolls, all those video players on Facebook where they just show you infinite TV shows that you never want to watch anyway, but you end up doing, all the Instagram things, and also integrated shopping within Instagram, for example. So they don't want people to go to a commerce website. They want to check out there. So have that in mind, just not playing in your favor at all. And also we have some people in the chat saying, even if social media clicks don't directly boost rankings, they bring more people to your site. If those visitors have a positive experience, they are more likely to return, share your content, and potentially link to it in the future. So yeah, there's this branding aspect of it and your popularity growing, but it's not directly clicks in search. That's gonna change.
The only the only thing that I would add to this as well, again, context is probably needed for this question because it's quite a big one. But in terms of what you're posting on social media, is there any data that you could analyze in terms of what's being engaged with, what's doing well, that you can then start to use and ideate for content on your own website? Because there could be a nice related link there, or there could be some engagement on certain posts that might mean that there's a good topic there to discuss on your own website. That could be a potential way of trying to ideate content for your own site.
Amazing. Okay, so we've literally got like a minute, 2 minutes left. So we'll jump straight on to the last question, which is our regular one. What are you most excited about in terms of SEO? Jonathan, what are you most excited about in terms of SEO?
I think for the first time in years, I'm actually like really excited at the moment. So I think for me, it's this concept of the way my brain's wired. It's mindful versus mindless stuff. And I've always tried to avoid doing like mindless tasks. And what I see is there's just this great opportunity at the moment to be doing more mindful work because of, say, all the technological advances that are happening right now. For example, something that really energized me recently was I did this webinar with Brittany Miller. It was like an hour-long webinar on creating LLMs to do apps, things like that. And I felt really energized coming off the back of that, really excited. It gave me lots of ideas. And for me, like that, there was this opportunity that, hey, this means I'm doing less mindless work. And that for me is so important because I want to be doing mindful stuff that has impact. So I think there's just this huge opportunity to be doing that.
Amazing. Luke, what about you? What are you most excited about in terms of SEO?
Outside of similar to what Jonathan said there around like the agenic age of AI and how that can help us, that's one thing. But actually what I'm looking forward to, particularly this year, so this is another plug, but a great friend of mine and a great technical SEO, Eva Mamingi, has created a SEO community in Greece, and she is running an event called Athens SEO. It's on May 24th in Athens. Tickets will be announced soon, but I'm just like super proud of how she's creating this community, and I'm excited to see where that goes and how that grows. Yeah, that's what I'm most looking forward to this year.
Amazing. And Natalia, what are you most looking forward to?
I'll be very quick. Deep research. Love that. Started using it a couple of days ago and I'm amazed. Can't wait to test it more.
Amazing. I think our time's up. Thank you so much to Luke and Jonathan for joining us this week. Natalia, thank you so much for co-hosting and keeping me on track, like Simon said. Thank you so much to those that joined us live and those watching afterwards on YouTube. And thank you to those that submitted the questions. I hope that helped. Have an amazing weekend, everybody. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Cheers.